Imagine standing on a major downtown street corner, right during the 5 p.m. rush hour.
Right, which is usually just pure chaos.
Exactly, pure noise. But now I want you to strip away the roar of the engines, the low-frequency rumble of heavy trucks, and even the smell of exhaust.
Just completely gone.
Yeah, it is almost entirely silent, save for, like, the hum of tires against asphalt. We tend to view the future of transportation as this simple infrastructure swap.
Like just replacing gas pumps with charging cables.
Right. But getting to that silent city requires a massive paradigm shift. So welcome to our deep dive into the seventh transport revolution.
It's a really fascinating transition.
It really is. Today we are exploring a multi-layered dossier that outlines a total rewiring of how cities, citizens, and energy grids are going to interact by the year 2035.
The scope of this is just vast, and our mission today is really to cut through all the noise for you.
Definitely.
We're pulling insights from a comprehensive technology foresight report by the Politecnico di Milano.
Which covers 2035 urban mobility, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Alongside heavily data-driven research from Modesy on electric mobility. And the goal here isn't just to list what's changing on the roads.
Right, it's deeper than that.
Yeah, we want to map out the underlying mechanics of why this transition is happening.
Yeah.
And how it directly reshapes your daily life, your finances, and, the infrastructure around you.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Because to understand the macro level changes hitting a city in 2035, we first have to put the foundational building block under a microscope.
The vehicle itself.
Right, the vehicle itself, and why moving away from combustion is a physical inevitability, not just some environmental trend.
Yeah, the physics really dictate the economics here.
Absolutely. The Modesy source material uses this striking analogy for the physical efficiency of a traditional internal combustion engine. They describe it as buying a 10-slice pizza, eating exactly 2 slices, and then
throwing the other 8 directly into the trash.
yes, which is such a vivid image. But honestly, I look at it more like, I don't know, trying to heat your entire house just to toast a single bagel.
That's a great way to put it.
But I have to ask, is it really that bad? Like, are EVs genuinely that much better, or is this just clever marketing? It feels almost absurdly wasteful when you frame it that way.
Well, it sounds absurd until you look at the raw thermodynamics.
Okay, lay it on me.
At which point you realize the waste is a physical inevitability of the technology. An internal combustion engine relies on thousands of controlled explosions every single minute.
Right, literally exploding fuel.
Exactly. Those detonations generate the kinetic energy needed to push pistons and turn a crankshaft. But the primary byproduct of an explosion is heat.
Right, along with all the vibration and noise.
Yeah, immense vibration and acoustic energy. All of that heat radiating through the engine block, all the mechanical friction of the moving parts that is your energy literally bleeding out into the atmosphere.
So that's the 8 slices of pizza in the trash.
That's the 8 slices. You only use about 20% of the energy to actually move the car. But an electric vehicle bypasses that entire mechanical labyrinth. It uses an electromagnetic field to turn the wheels directly.
So there's way less energy lost in the process.
Exactly. Because of that direct energy transfer, an EV converts roughly 90% of its stored energy into forward motion.
Wait, 90%? That is a massive difference.
They're revolutionary.
That structural difference changes the entire economic model of driving, doesn't it? I mean, we've normalized a system where 80% of our fuel budget just evaporates as heat.
We really have, yeah.
But shifting to an EV isn't just about saving fuel, it's about eliminating all that mechanical complexity.
Right, you remove the spark plugs, the timing belts.
Like connecting rods, all of it.
Yeah.
So the routine maintenance essentially plummets, right?
Right.
We're basically just replacing tires, cabin air filters, and occasionally brake pads.
And even the brake pads last longer because of regenerative braking.
Exactly.
And that simplification is the actual driver of the market shift. You are no longer driving a mechanical machine. You are driving a computer on wheels.
A computer on wheels. I like that.
But the pushback we constantly see in the data, it usually revolves around battery longevity.
Oh, the battery myth?
Right. People assume that because their smartphone battery degrades noticeably after 2 years, a car battery will follow the exact same curve.
And saddle the owner with some massive replacement bill.
Exactly. Which seems like a logical leap, except that assumption completely ignores how battery management systems actually function.
Yeah, because a phone is passively cooled, right? And we're
Yeah.
constantly running it down to 0%.
Right. And that thermal stress is what destroys battery chemistry. The Modus E data decisively puts this battery myth to rest.
How so?
An EV battery is a highly regulated, active thermal environment. The vehicle pumps liquid coolant or heating fluid in the winter right through the battery pack.
Oh, so it keeps the cells at an optimal temperature constantly.
Exactly. It prevents the chemical degradation that kills consumer electronics. Real-world tracking shows that after a full decade of regular use, these automotive packs maintain over 80% of their original capacity.
After 10 years, that's incredible.
Yeah, they simply do not age like a combustion engine, which physically grinds its own components down over hundreds of thousands of miles.
You know, the Modesy paper makes a fascinating comparison here. They liken legacy automakers clinging to combustion to Kodak, ignoring digital film.
Or BlackBerry doubling down on physical keyboards.
Yes. The entire auto industry is having this adapt or die moment. They're pivoting toward software-defined vehicles or SDVs.
Right.
The value of the car is shifting away from the horsepower of the engine block to the quality of the code running the over-the-air updates.
Yeah, code that optimizes battery routing and manages the user interface.
It's wild.
It is, but that software pivot is the crucial enabler for the city of 2035.
Okay, but let's pause here. Fixing the engine doesn't fix the geometry of the city.
It's a very good point.
I mean, a 2-ton software-defined electric vehicle takes up the exact same physical space on the pavement as a 2-ton gas guzzler.
It absolutely does.
So if we just swap the drivetrains one for one, we haven't solved urban congestion at all. We've merely created a cleaner, quieter gridlock.
Which means we have to zoom out from the individual vehicle and look at the urban ecosystem.
Right. And the Politecnico di Milano report uses a European metropolis like Milan as a baseline for this, right?
Yeah, with a dense metropolitan population of about 1.3 million.
Okay, but when we talk about restructuring how people move, we hit a massive psychological barrier. People love their independence.
Oh, absolutely. The private car equals freedom for most people.
Exactly. So if the future relies on reducing private car ownership, how do urban planners avoid making people feel like their mobility is being restricted? How do we get them to give up their cars without feeling like they're giving up their freedom?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the strategy outlined in the Politecnico report isn't about restricting movement. It is about eliminating the friction of movement.
Okay, friction of movement, what does that mean in practice?
They outline two main pillars. First, shifting from private ownership to mobility as a service. And second, developing deeply integrated multimodal public transport networks.
So relying more on shared services.
Right. And the freedom aspect is maintained through the expansion of micromobility and the architecture of the 20-minute neighborhood.
Ah, the 20-minute neighborhood. That's the idea that the city is zoned so that your daily necessities, groceries, schools, healthcare, are within a short walk or bike ride.
Exactly. For those medium to short trips, integrating an on-demand e-bike or e-scooter network gives you the exact same point-to-point autonomy as a car.
But you bypass the mental fatigue of sitting in traffic.
And the physical hunt for parking. Not to mention the financial drain of insurance and maintenance.
Right, that makes sense.
The keyword there is integration. The software we mentioned earlier. It connects the train schedule to the e-scooter availability in real time.
Oh, so it's totally seamless.
Exactly. But the report is remarkably pragmatic about the timeline here. The year 2035 is firmly categorized as a transitional phase, not a finish line.
Right, we are not going to wake up and find every legacy vehicle magically erased from the roads.
No, not at all. We'll see a massive technological overlap.
The sources note we'll have an influx of EVs sharing the road with level 4 and level 5 autonomous vehicles, right?
Yeah, those are the highly automated self-driving systems.
But importantly, we will still have internal combustion engines operating. They will just be transitioning to zero-emission fuels.
Right. The inclusion of e-fuels, advanced biofuels, and green or blue hydrogen is really vital for this transition.
Especially for heavy commercial transport, right?
Exactly. Aviation, maritime, long-distance logistics, they require energy densities that batteries struggle to meet at current weights.
So how do e-fuels bridge that gap?
Well, e-fuels are synthesized by combining captured carbon dioxide with green hydrogen.
So they're artificially made.
Yeah, and they are chemically identical to gasoline or diesel, which means they can be dropped straight into existing mechanical engines.
Oh, wow. So you don't even need to modify the trucks.
Nope. It effectively decarbonizes the legacy fleet. while the heavy-duty electric infrastructure slowly catches up.
Okay, let's look closely at that electric infrastructure because this is where the logistics get incredibly complicated.
They definitely do.
If we are replacing millions of combustion engines with millions of heavy draw SDVs, and they are all interacting within this smart multimodal grid, I mean, the power requirements seem insurmountable.
It's a huge concern for a lot of people.
Right. I want to challenge the models here with the classic 6 p.m. blackout scenario. We hear this myth all the time.
The idea that everyone comes home at once and breaks the grid.
Exactly. The fear is that a whole city finishes work, goes home, plugs in their cars, turns on their heat pumps and induction stoves, and completely overloads the neighborhood transformers.
It is the most common anxiety surrounding electrification. But the MODA-C analysis pulls the historical grid data to totally dismantle it.
Oh, really? How?
Even factoring in an aggressive adoption curve by 2035, the electrification of the vehicle fleet will only increase national electricity demand by roughly 10 to 15%.
Just 10 to 15%.
Yeah. In the Italian model used in the report, that translates to an additional 23 terawatt hours annually.
Okay, but to put 23 terawatt hours in perspective, that is still a colossal amount of energy. That's comparable to the output of several large-scale power plants running continuously for a year.
It is a significant figure, I won't deny that.
Mm.
But the grid doesn't operate in a vacuum. The context is that overall national power consumption in the early 2000s was actually higher than it is today.
Wait, really? Higher 20 years ago? Because of industrial inefficiency and outdated consumer tech?
Exactly that. A combination of heavily inefficient industrial motors, legacy manufacturing processes, and, just incandescent lighting.
Oh, right. Old light bulbs used a ton of power.
Yeah. It meant the baseline load 20 years ago was significantly higher. The physical transmission lines already have the historical capacity to absorb this 10 to 15% increase.
That's fascinating.
But what's fascinating here is that the vehicles aren't just passive consumers of power.
They're not.
No. Through smart charging and vehicle-to-grid or VDG technology, they are actually the mechanism that stabilizes the grid.
Okay, I look at V2G like a decentralized financial clearinghouse, but for electrons. Because the grid currently has a timing problem with renewables, right?
Huge timing problem, yeah?
Solar generation peaks at noon when demand is low and drops off at dusk just as residential demand spikes.
Right. It's the classic storage bottleneck. And this is where the millions of rolling computers solve the macro infrastructure problem.
How did that work?
With smart charging, the grid automatically routes that abundant, cheap solar energy into the vehicle batteries during the day.
While people are at work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then, at 6 p.m., when the grid hits peak demand and the risk of blackout is highest, VDG technology kicks in.
And does what?
It allows the grid to pull a very small percentage of that stored power back out of the millions of plugged-in cars.
Oh, wow. So they act collectively as a massive distributed battery.
Yes. A massive shock absorber, smoothing out the peaks and valleys of renewable generation.
But wait, this raises an important question about systemic vulnerabilities.
Go on.
To orchestrate a system where millions of autonomous batteries are constantly negotiating with the grid, buying and selling power in real time, you need a flawless, high-speed data architecture.
You absolutely do.
You need 5G or 6G networks overlaying the power lines, which means the primary threat to our transportation network shifts from physical supply chain shocks like an oil shortage to digital subversion.
The cybersecurity implications are massive. The MODA-C white paper explicitly links this transition to the European Union's NIS2 directive.
What does that directive cover?
Well, when your vehicle is functionally integrated into the national power grid, it becomes critical infrastructure. The directive mandates stringent zero-trust architectures and end-to-end encryption.
Because a vulnerability in a car's software isn't just a risk to the driver anymore.
Exactly. A coordinated hack could hypothetically command 1 million vehicles to draw maximum power simultaneously.
Intentionally triggering the very blackout the system is designed to prevent. That's terrifying.
It is. The infrastructure of 2035 relies just as heavily on firewalls as it does on copper wiring.
That completely reframes the entire concept of a public utility.
It really does.
But I want to bring this back down to the individual level, specifically regarding access. Because this ecosystem of software-defined vehicles, bidirectional charging, and V2G integration, it sounds amazing, but it's also highly advanced.
And highly expensive, yes.
Right. So what does this all mean for the average person? There is a legitimate fear that we are engineering a pristine, sustainable transport network that lower-income populations are completely priced out of.
Yeah, the risk of creating a two-tiered mobility system is clearly acknowledged in the source
So
material.
how to fix it?
Social equity has to be the linchpin of a successful transition. To address the high upfront capital cost of EVs, the Mo2C paper proposes regulatory frameworks like a social long-term rental system.
A social rental system, what does that look like?
It would be a state-backed or subsidized lease structure specifically targeted at lower-income demographics. It allows them to access the technology and benefit from the drastically lower daily operating and maintenance costs.
Whoa, so they get the savings without needing the credit for a massive initial purchase.
Exactly.
That addresses targeted relief, which is great. But for the broader market, I assume the organic way to drive down costs is through the secondary market?
Yes, and the research highlights what they call the corporate fleet trick.
The corporate fleet trick. I love that. What is it?
Well, in many European markets, roughly half of all new vehicle registrations are actually corporate fleets.
Really? 1 and 2 cars.
Yeah, and corporate leases typically operate on 3 to 4 year cycles. So if government incentives heavily target the electrification of those commercial fleets today,
It creates a predictable, massive influx of 3-year-old electric vehicles into the used car market tomorrow.
exactly, that naturally depreciated supply is what actually democratizes the technology for the general public.
That is so smart. And while the policy creates access, the underlying chemistry of the batteries is evolving to make those cars infinitely more practical, too.
Oh, the hardware advancements are incredible right now.
Yeah, here's where it gets really interesting. The industry is rapidly migrating to 800-volt electrical architectures.
Right, stepping up from the legacy 400-volt system.
Exactly. By doubling the voltage, you can push the exact same amount of power through the system using half the current. Less current means significantly less resistance.
And less resistance means less heat.
Right. And heat is the absolute enemy of fast charging, isn't it?
It is. By mitigating that thermal bottleneck, an 800-volt architecture allows a vehicle to absorb immense amounts of power safely.
How fast are we talking?
We are looking at charging curves that take a battery from 10% to 80% capacity in about 18 minutes.
18 minutes. That realigns the charging process with the natural cadence of a road trip.
Exactly. The time it takes to plug in, stretch your legs, and grab a coffee is exactly the time the vehicle needs to add another 300 miles of range.
That's game-changing. And the battery density metrics are equally compelling.
Oh, the projections in the Polytechnico report are wild. They suggest energy density could double every 8 years.
Double. Every 8 years.
Yeah, driven largely by shifts toward solid-state technology.
So replacing the liquid electrolyte inside the battery with a solid conductive material.
Right. It eliminates the flammability risk and drastically compresses the physical size. By 2050, a 100 kilowatt-hour battery, which currently weighs around 600 kilograms, could weigh less than 200 kilograms.
That is a massive weight reduction.
Right.
And the lighter the car, the less energy it requires to move, which creates this compounding loop of efficiency.
Exactly. And the final piece of that efficiency loop addresses the end-of-life cycle.
Right, because the lingering question has always been, what happens to millions of depleted battery packs? We don't want a massive landfill issue.
No, but in a fully realized circular economy, an exhausted battery isn't hazardous waste. It is a high-grade ore.
High grade or
Yeah. Italy, according to the data, will generate a potential 40 kilotons of end-of-life batteries by 2030.
wow.
And through advanced hydrometallurgy, recycling facilities can recover up to 95% of the critical raw materials.
So the lithium, the cobalt, the nickel.
All of it. You transition from extracting minerals out of the earth to extracting them out of old chassis. The supply chain basically becomes a closed loop.
That's incredible. You know, when you pull all these threads together, the sheer scale of the 2035 vision becomes so clear.
It's a total transformation.
It really is. We started by looking at the thermodynamic tragedy of the internal combustion engine, burning fuel just to generate wasted heat.
The 10-slice pizza.
Exactly. And from that simple physical reality, the sources map out a trajectory toward software-defined vehicles, multimodal urban networks, that prioritize frictionless movement over ownership.
And a power grid stabilized by the very machines drawing from it.
Right. It is a profound architectural redesign of modern society.
Yeah, it is. And I actually want to leave you with one final implication to consider, building on that V2G technology we discussed.
Oh, I'm ready. Let's hear it.
We are moving toward a near future where your vehicle ceases to be a depreciating asset parked idly in a driveway, draining your finances.
Okay.
Instead, it becomes an automated energy trader. It could absorb surplus solar energy at a low cost during the day, and while you are sleeping, it can sell a fraction of that stored energy back to your local grid at a premium during peak nighttime demand.
Wow. So in the 2035 ecosystem, your car isn't just a mode of transport, it's a financial asset that might actually pay you to own it.
Exactly.
A vehicle that actively generates returns while it just sits in the garage, that completely upends a century of automotive economics.
It really does. It's a brave new world.
It truly is. Well, we want to extend a huge thank you to you, the learner, for bringing your curiosity to this deep dive.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Our goal today was to take a complex web of engineering, urban planning, and energy data and translate it into a clear, compelling narrative about the world being built around us. You are now equipped with the context to see past the charging stations and understand the mechanics driving the seventh transport revolution. Until next time, keep looking at the systems beneath the surface.